Let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zephyr's Adjusted for Risk podcast from the shores of Lake Tahoe. I am Ryan Nauman, the market strategist here at Zephyr. I have another fantastic show lined up for us today. I say often on this show that the wealth management space is as competitive as ever, and changing demands from wealth management clients and investors makes a financial advisor's job even more difficult when trying to build a self-sustaining practice. Well, I have on the perfect guest to talk about the different strategies regarding building a self-sustaining financial advisory practice and much, much more. But first, today's episode is sponsored by the award-winning Zephyr, which helps investment professionals make more informed investment decisions. I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Jason Smith. Jason is the founder and CEO at Prosperity Capital Advisors and J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management. Jason is also the author of the books titled Rainmaker Multiplier: How to Create a Self-Sustaining, Scalable Financial Planning Business, and The Bucket Plan: Protecting and Growing Your Assets for a Worry-Free Retirement. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's really an honor to have you on. First with being the author of two books and CEO and founder of where do you find time to do podcasts? So it's an honor to have you on. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and Prosperity Capital Advisors and JL Smith Holistic Wealth Management?
Sure, Ryan. I find the time between, taking care of my twin 8-year-olds and twin 10-year-olds with my wife and running our working organic non-GMO farm that we've been building over the last few years. Mainly, it's really to create unique experiences for family, friends, clients, financial advisors. So we do a lot of events and entertaining, but we produce a ton of food, meats, vegetables, eggs, honey, fish, beef, turkey, chicken that we're pushing out to everybody in our sphere, everybody that we love and we love to take care of.
That's awesome, Jason. First of all, two sets of twins?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I have a 27-year-old daughter. Yeah.
Oh,
She was the
wow.
whoops,
Yeah,
and then the other four were planned, but yeah, not somewhat of a surprise to have two sets of twins, though,
yeah.
obviously.
That would be fun. Fun. And then also the farm, growing up in Wisconsin, my family, we had a hobby farm is what it was really literally a hobby with sheep and some cows and chickens. It was always fun. Always fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we have. I have a hard time keeping things small, so before you know it, it turned into more than a hobby farm that and loses an incredible amount of money, but takes care of an incredible amount of people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's not all about the money, right?
that's right. That's exactly right. And yeah, I mean, I can, Ryan, I'll tell you a quick little story we didn't even talk about kind of when we, debriefed to like
Yeah.
or did a little brief before we had the podcast. But where this all started for me is, I was very blessed in that I was a very good at like connecting with people and like I guess you call it sales, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I started out on the insurance side of the business.
Yeah.
Um, Knocking doors selling home health care policies. And then I learned how to sell Medicare supplements and final expense. And then I found annuities and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I could sell one of these. And, it took
Yeah.
me selling 100 of those. And then fell in love with estate planning and life insurance, worked closely with a law firm, got my certified estate planner designation and really went deep there. Then I really got into the tax planning and management aspect of things. It was funny, the last thing I did was get my investment license because I had a very close family friend that I always referred all the investment business, and he referred me all the
Okay.
insurance, and I was kind of the quarterback of it. He'd bring me in and we'd work with families that were in need of what we call today holistic wealth management. But early on, like I said, it was like the way I was taught is to really just keep expenses as low as possible, pay your assistant the least amount of money you could possibly find somebody for to just do your paperwork, right? And like, make yourself, make it as most profitable as it could.
Yeah.
So if you go back to when I was 29 years old, and I was predominantly where my income was coming from was annuities and life insurance and
Yeah.
some long-term care. As I mentioned, we were doing holistic wealth management, but that's how I was getting paid. And I was making about 600 grand a year, right? And at 29 years old, it was great,
Yeah.
so very low overhead, $500 a month storefront, right? That I was renting. And then I had an assistant. I was probably paying, maybe $500 a week, to help me do the paperwork and stuff. And so life was good. I had a new wife and young daughter, who's, the one I was talking about before, 27 now. And the thing is like I didn't see any need to really build a business. I just knew I was crushing it, from a financial standpoint at a young age. Unfortunately though, because my dad was an insurance guy. And uh I only worked for him for a year before he fired me and was like, you need to go start your own thing. Nobody can tell you what to do. And so but I was playing in a basketball league and I all of a sudden my heart started going crazy. And something, long story short, I end up getting diagnosed with, irregular heartbeat caused by a valve that needed to be repaired, and like a serious, small
Yeah.
aneurysm. 29 years old, never saw it coming, perfectly healthy, and I was the shoemaker's kid. I had no life insurance. With a wife and daughter, no life
Yeah.
insurance. So it hit me like a ton of bricks. If I die on an operating table, my income dies with me. I don't have a business. I'm just a good salesperson and a good financial advisor, right? And so I set out at that point, 20 years ago to build a business that would run profitably with or without me. And that was the ultimate mission that I set out on, and to do.
Well, Jason, that's a fantastic story. And, it's interesting how, so thank you for sharing that, number one, but it takes like such a major event like that in your life to kind of, set the tone for your career and your career aspirations moving forward, right? And what you've done since then has been fantastic. Like, I mentioned writing the books, you got the Rainmaker multiplier, and I love how you started in the industry really maybe a little bit opposite than most people, financial advisors or wealth planners. They start on the investment side and
Yeah.
then maybe gravitate more towards insurance and financial planning. You did it opposite. So you really had a better idea of the holistic financial plan and how important it is, not just the investments.
Yeah, and Ryan, absolutely. And and I tell you to kind of put a bow on it because everybody wonders, well, what kind of happened? You know what I mean? So yeah, so I set onto this path, and that's what the Rainmaker Multiplier book does, is it describes the journey from that point,
Okay.
right, all the way to today, where, today we're, I mean, $12 million in my practice, JL Smith, 12 million in revenue, 3 million in profit, 30 employees, like runs completely
Yeah.
autonomously without me. I haven't produced in 5 years. And so I really show up. We run on the EOS operating system. So I run, I'm there for the 2 day annual, the
Yeah.
1 day quarterly, and then the weekly L10 for an hour and a half. And really a hands off. That's a passive income. And that's
Yeah.
what the book really describes is like you know, how to put the people and processes in place, right? In order to put your business in a situation. And the rainmakers, right? How to
Yeah.
attract, retain, and reward top talent in your firm, how to grow that talent to ultimately stick around and be those that next generation of rainmakers. But proof of concept is everything, Ryan.
Mhm.
And it was just 1 year ago, a few days ago, May 31st. After all those years, I had the open heart surgery. It was a success. They repaired what needed to get repaired. I was able to just kind of monitor and
Yeah.
whatever through the years. And I took 5 months off. 5 months off, no email, no text, no
Yeah.
phone, no meetings whatsoever work related for 5 months.
Wow.
I came back after 5 months, and both companies, JL Smith, which is my practice under the RIA,
Yep.
and Prosperity Capital Advisors, our RIA, that has offices all over the country similar to mine that affiliate and lean on us
Mhm.
for support. Both companies had their biggest and most profitable and most successful quarters that they had ever had without me while I was out.
That's awesome. Number one, congratulate you. Look fantastic after, a year ago after a major surgery and 5 months off. You look great. It
Thanks.
really wasn't that long ago, right? When you think of how quickly a year goes. So that's awesome. And then, so for those financial advisors out there who maybe are thinking, gosh, that sounds great. I don't want to have the open heart surgery, but maybe take
Right.
a sabbatical to where I can leave for a couple months. How many
Right.
financial advisors out there think that they confidently think and believe that the practice will be okay if they took a sabbatical, traveled the country, or sailed the world for
Right.
a month? Probably not very many.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's true. Too many are the sole rainmakers. And so much of what we do and what we focus on and why the entrepreneur financial advisors that have their own businesses will affiliate with us, right? And use us as their back office and to relieve a lot of work and help train them and their staff on how to, put these systems and processes in place, the reason they're doing that is because they want that same freedom, right? At the end of the day, Ryan, it's all about freedom, right? If you think about it, um, you know, people that work so many years in this business and they help so many people, because I would argue that there's no other profession other than the medical profession, right? The doctors and the
yeah,
nurses. I don't think anybody truly helps people like we help people. If you're out there and you're doing what we refer to as holistic wealth management, and you're advising, you're not just selling AUM and
yeah,
selling annuities and life insurance. I mean, you're truly wrapping your arms around the client and providing, true advice and consultation and coaching and, helping them achieve those goals and dotting all the I's, crossing the T's, coordinating it all together. We're doing something special,
yeah,
right? The advisor's listening. You're doing something
yeah,
extremely special, right? And you deserve to have the time freedom to take the time off and spend it with your family. You deserve the relationship freedom to pick and choose what relationships you continue. Too often, a lot of the advisors, they start out and they work with anybody who will fog a mirror. And then as they advance, right, in their
yeah,
capabilities to be able to provide a higher level of consultation and service and support, they have the ability to work with more affluent families, right? And but yet they're still strapped to
yeah.
servicing all those small clients. And this is, so you deserve the relationship freedom. And then, ultimately you deserve the financial freedom. The financial freedom, to not be strapped to your business, not work
Yeah.
for your business, let your business work for you. And that's what we try to help people do.
Fantastic, Jason. So our audience who's listening or maybe knows of the book and stuff, and they're very interested, they want that freedom, financial freedom, or just personal freedom to spend time with their family, like a practice like you've started. Where do they start? Maybe they're feel like they're in that rat chase, right? And just grinding their wheels 80 hours a week. Where do they start?
Yeah. Well, Ryan, I mean, I'll just talk about some of the mistakes I've made because I'm like the king of making mistakes, right? I've made so many.
Well, if you're the king, then I must be, who knows what I am then.
So you're Yoda of mistake. No, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
right. Um, so I had that mindset early on that employees were an expense, not an investment. And I was taught that employees are an expense, not an investment, right? Like on when you look at your P&L and when you just think about business as a whole. And where I really like feel like a big part of my career shifted is when I started looking at team members as an investment,
Okay.
not an expense. That was like a paradigm shift that happened for me. And I started to realize that the more successful people that I could surround myself with, the smarter people got to the point now where I try not to hire anyone who I can't really validate is smarter than me.
Yeah,
Like I really want people smarter than me. That's the goal, right? Because that's how the organization, and listen, we all have smarts in different ways, right? I mean, there's six different types of intelligence. That's a cool thing to look up too. I use it with my kids a lot because they have different strengths, and
yeah,
I'll talk to them about what types of smarts they have. It's something cool to look up as a side note, but everybody's got these different type of smarts or intelligence. But at
yeah,
the end of the day, you know, what really made a big difference for me is when I really started to understand like what my unique ability was, right? And strategic coach teaches that, and so does conscious leadership group. If you've ever heard of either of these groups, they call it being in the zone. So what it is like if you think about it, there's like four categories of stuff you do. One category is unique ability. Unique ability is something that you are excellent at, you're better than most anyone at, and you have passion for it, right? You could
yeah,
do it all day long, and at the end of the day, you are still full of energy. The second category of the four is an excellent activity, right? Something you're not, you're lights out. You're better than most everybody. At the end of the day, you're cake, right? You're like spent after you do it. And then the third is something you're competent at, but certainly other people can do it better than you. And the fourth is things that you suck at. You're kind of incompetent, right? You shouldn't be doing them.
yeah,
And so the idea was, as I started looking for how do I shed all my incompetent or activities that were really stressing me and things I was making mistakes on? The next thing is like, how do I start investing in people that can do the competent things, but they're excellent at it where I'm just competent at it?
yeah.
And then the next real big evolution, which happened more, over the last 5 to 10 years, is when you start really dialing in and it's like, where are you in the zone or where are you in your unique ability where you're better than everybody else or one of the best at it,
Yeah.
but you're also on fire, passionate about it, versus the excellent activities because they blur. Because sometimes, like, you just love, like, when you kill it at something, like artificially, you're just like, okay, like that was awesome because I did so good. But at the end of the day, when you take a deep breath and you're spent,
Yep.
that's kind of that difference. So the more you can focus on those passion kind of things, the zone or the unique ability, what I found is I surrounded myself and made the investment of the team members around me that had passion and excellent capability to do the things that wasn't my unique ability.
I love that you brought that up and about the teamwork. You know, maybe so many financial advisors say, well, I can provide you with the best performance or the best products, and that's how they maybe distinguish their practice. But really, it comes back to the team, right? I'm a big sports fan. So, and as you were talking, it's like to build the best football team, basketball team, you need to surround the team with players that do their role really good, right? And you have a culture, and I think culture is one thing that maybe people talk about, but maybe don't understand how to really put it in place. Can you provide any tips about culture and like how you have a culture that you want at your practice, but make sure all your associates and your team share that same culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think cultures, you know, what do they say in that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? For,
Yeah.
in business, and it's true. And so, culture is something that you always have to be working on, and you can never stop. You can never give up on it, no matter how bad it gets. If it's times your business is suffering, or you lose a key employer, whatever it is, or people are, whatever it is, you just gotta always stay focused on culture. Like having written core values is really important, but like, listen, don't just write them and throw them on the wall. Like
Yeah.
every month we do a all company meeting where we restate our core values, right? And so we're always in when we hire, when we fire, when we promote, when we do quarterly reviews with employees, we review their the core values and whether they're living by those core values. So, I mean, it's just something that I think is so important. I know, early on, going back to, the mistake I made was trying to pay people too low to get like the cheapest employees
Yeah.
possible. And I figured out how that, the other big mistake I think I made is like, just focusing on business process almost just became, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like not realizing that, you know, the people are your greatest asset, right? And you have to treat your clients, are your people, your employees, like your number one triple A top level client. Whatever your client categorization is, whatever the highest one is, you need to be treating your employees the same way you treat those clients, right? And so, that's a really important piece because the reality of it is your employees, especially as you grow, are having as much or more interaction with your clients than you are. And if they're not happy, they can put on a smiley face, but people read body language. They hear the tone. They know what is in people's hearts, right? And so you need to fill their hearts, and and you need to do everything you can, to culturally maintain. The other piece of culture from a mistake standpoint too, Ryan, that I've been undergoing just the last few years in both of my companies is you know, I kind of I guess I mistaked a little bit like um I don't want to say a mistake. I'm trying to think of the right word to put it. We allowed ourselves to kind of just um, prioritize loyalty, right? And our need to be loyal to people over, and I'm saying every one of the employees, right?
Yeah.
Over the loyalty to the business and the loyalty to the highest performers, the high performers within the business.
Yeah.
And I think what happened is like, and we've righted the ship, but we started to see like it was acceptable to have low performers because they'd been around for a while. They had a lot of tribal knowledge. They're nice people. They do this, you know what I mean? Like, and you just kind of become complacent. And you make excuses for, for Joe or Sally or whatever it is. And then before you know it, the high performers start kind of their play starts coming down to the level or the lower performers, or they start getting frustrated because they're having to pull the weight of the low performers and it's not fair, right? And or they're like this, you know what I mean? This just doesn't. So we experienced some cultural challenges, and then we made the commitment about, I would say it's probably 3 years ago now. We're in our third year, at
Yeah.
least two and a half, that we were like, hey, no more. We are a high performance culture.
Okay.
We no longer pay cost of living adjustments like an annual raise people get no matter what. Everything is performance based, and we're only giving, a promotion or a raise or a bonus to the people that are high performing
Yeah.
at a high level, right? And so we've really just really doubled down on that high performance culture. And that was a challenge. We had to take a step back culturally because there was a lot of like we had to let a lot of people go. We
Yeah.
did. And some people had been with us for a long time because they just weren't meeting the standards of the A player kind of high performance culture that we were looking to build. But ultimately, it's like something I think you just always have to be focused on. And I'm going to put a plug for my favorite business author and thought leader in
Yeah.
the space of organizational health. And it's Patrick Lencioni. And so he just has a bunch of great books on culture, and he's just a great thought leader on that. Learned a lot from him.
Jason, I bet you had to have a lot of tough conversations. Probably not a time for, letting those people go that have been with you for so long and you felt loyal to. Probably a lot of tough conversations, but in the end, they were conversations that needed to be had. Culture, at Zephyr, when I started, our office was on the shores of Lake Tahoe, and our client support staff always got such rave reviews from our users and subscribers, and they were like, support is fantastic, everyone's happy. And I often got a lot of questions. Why is your support so good? And I was like, well, we've got a really great culture. And how can you not be happy like living in Tahoe where, a quarter mile from the lake at lunch, people are taking their dogs to the beach. There was that culture of kind of a mountain town and and it resonated with support and it worked really well over the
Absolutely.
years.
And
So,
here's the thing, Ryan, is as your listeners are listening to this and they're maybe doing a little bit of soul searching and they're thinking about current employees they have and
yeah.
that kind of thing. And it's hard, right? But the thing that we've found is like some of the people that were kind of not hitting our performance expectations internally or didn't have much
Mhm.
upside, right? Because we want to invest in talent that has the ability and desire to continue to grow, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of age, right? Like somebody, I'm, creeping on 50 years old. I'm more growth oriented and more have a thirst for knowledge and getting better than ever in my life, right?
Yeah.
So not about age, it's about, really their desire to continue to grow. But the thing is you have to make a decision. Are you a lifestyle practice where you're okay with the status quo and just kind of like
Yeah.
flatlining, if you will? Maybe bring on some new clients, but you're going to have attrition as well. Maybe have a decent service but not an unbelievable client experience, and that is okay for a lot
Yeah.
of advisors. They're okay with just kind of a lifestyle practice, keeping it super simple, and they're okay with maybe not real high performers on their team. But if you're looking to grow and you're looking to build your firm into a firm that can run profitably with or without you, then you have to develop leaders. And, when you're developing leaders, it has to be in an environment and a culture and a high performance type of culture. It's an important thing. And then as you grow, you can make the mistake I did and let creep come in where you start getting so big. I mean, we have, almost 100 employees now, or creeping on 100 employees between the two organizations, or I think it's over 100. And it's easy to get lost in like a lot of those people just, that aren't performing. But even, I would just say it's a little bit of soul searching for people.
Yeah.
If you're committed to, building a business that can run successfully with or without you. And there's a lot of reasons people do that, Ryan. Like some people will do it to take time off, right, with their
Yeah.
family and loved ones and travel and do that, but maintain the business. The other reason a lot of people do it is your valuation of your business is substantially higher when you're not the rainmaker.
Yeah.
Because a buyer, it's much more attractive. They can plug and play and buy your business, and it's a passive income, versus having to plug in other rainmakers to make it work. So, yeah, you have a book of business that's got value, but you really want to build enterprise value, it's when you're building, a team, and this can be a small team, it could be a
Yeah.
five-person team, but you build the team that can independently run, not just run the business, but grow the business. In your absence, that's the key. And that's what I get so passionate about because I do feel like I've kind of cracked the code a little bit on it, and I've helped a lot of different other entrepreneurs do it, and so it's just so fulfilling for me
Mhm.
because when I see the results and I see them experience that same kind of result where their business is continuing to grow, it does so many things, Ryan, because you view clients number one priority always first, right? So
Yeah.
think about the client. If the sole rainmaker dies and the business is in shambles without him, his wife or spouse is going to be forced to sell the business, probably even a fire sale and not get
Yeah.
fair market value, right? And it just and then what happens to the clients? The
Yeah.
clients all of a sudden have everything changes. Investment platform changes,
Yeah.
service offering changes, people might get let go that they're used to working with, so it's a major disruption for the clients. And then secondarily, it's a major disruption for the employees and any advisors you have in your firm of all of a sudden, like the rug gets pulled out from under them. And so I just feel like, building your business in a way where it gives you the freedom to be able to financial and time freedom to step away. It also gives you that enterprise value, that multiple on your EBITDA to bump your valuation because you're no longer, the one holding it all together.
Jason, that is fantastic because we talk a lot about succession planning, advisors getting older. What is the next step, right? And M&A is so popular right now, and such an important topic. You brought up a very good point about increasing those valuations through having a practice that's self-sustainable, right? And one that doesn't necessarily need you there all the time. All right, Jason. So you talked about your journey through creating this self-sustaining practice and being very successful in your book. Are there steps in the journey of building that, self-sustaining practice that are often overlooked that shouldn't be overlooked by financial advisors?
Ryan, I would say like the three key components that the book kind of describes. Like I said, it's a true story of the journey of me going through this. But number one is a documented financial planning process, right? Step by step. So any advisors you're trying to train, any backstage team members that support you, it all is in succinct, like Starbucks, right? So a very clear, well-defined, documented financial planning process, similar to what we have with the bucket plan, which is another, a book and a designation and all that good stuff. And so that was a big key component of systematizing the client experience, right? And adding a lot of efficiency to the firm. The second of the three big key kind of components or breakthroughs is we were able to differentiate ourselves through tax planning, management, and then ultimately bolted on preparation to take care of our clients or prospective clients, getting them in the door first with tax preparation, and then eventually making them full holistic wealth
Yeah.
management clients. So, marketing ourselves in the community and really putting ourselves at a higher level of advice than other financial
Mhm.
advisors by putting that tax planning, management, preparation component to our business and marketing ourselves that way and doing a lot of a nonprofit adult education around that. And it attracts a higher level of client as well. So that second piece was really key. And then the third and final was really going the ensemble practice route and building an advisor career path and compensation structure that incentivized the firm to be successful and more profitable instead of the individual silos of the advisor. Going back to the mistakes I made, I had advisors on grids where it was like eat what you kill. All they cared about is their client base. They weren't clients of the firm, they were their clients. And it was like it created these silos and didn't have that ensemble practice, that team-based approach that I wanted. And so when we tore down the grids and re-engineered and then and changed the compensation to the W-2 model, which is where they have a base salary and then a quarterly bonus based on the firm's success. And then they get a monthly sales bonus based on new business they're bringing in. It incentivized the behavior we wanted, which was collaboration and teamwork. And so those were probably the three biggest breakthroughs or components that I talk about in the Rainmaker Multiplier book, and that really moved the dial for me.
Jason, it kind of goes back to this whole conversation too, where you talk about the team building a cohesive team. We didn't once really mention technology. We didn't talk about a tech stack, which I'm very grateful for, or, investments and stuff like that. Creating a process that, can be repeated, a consistent process. And those are the things that maybe some financial advisors, not even financial advisors, business owners, documentation isn't very much fun, but very important.
Right. Right.
Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such a fun conversation. I learned a lot. I loved your great stories, really engaging. It was fun. Where can our audience get more information about Prosperity Capital Advisors and your two books?
Yeah. So definitely the Rainmaker Multiplier book is on Amazon. The Bucket Plan book, which is on the holistic wealth management process, that's on Amazon. Our website of Prosperity Capital Advisors. And we also have a podcast called the Rainmaker Multiplier as well. So anywhere where you consume or gain access to your podcast, you can get that there. But my closing piece of advice, focus on the people and focus on the processes,
Mm,
documented processes. And you don't have to build them. We have them. We
yeah.
could share them. We could help you with it or plug into another organization, but documented processes and the right people, and that will set you free.
Jason, fantastic. It was such an honor to have you on. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Zephyr's Adjusted for Risk podcast. You can watch all of our other podcasts on the Zephyr YouTube channel as well as on Spotify. And please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels and follow us on LinkedIn. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Ryan.
Jason.